It's Harmon Dash from Make It Fair, along with my colleague Tracy Bender, our founder Stuart Phillips. As you know, we like to shine a light on corruption and how it has affected our democracy. And in light of the mass shootings that occurred over this past weekend in El Paso and Dayton, and the mass shootings that seem to be occurring regularly, we wanted to take a look at how the gun lobby is affecting our democracy. And this is not just about the NRA. They might be the most high-profile members of the gun lobby that we hear about, but this is about the gun lobby as a whole as well. And you've done a lot of research as to how much money is spent and to what is coming back in return and to how it is affecting everything. It's a pretty tangled web.
Well, you know, as Stuart always says, follow the money. So yesterday he asked me to do a little bit of research about exactly how much money has been donated just over the last year to different candidates. And once I started doing the research, I was pretty overwhelmed at how tangled the web is. So direct money to candidates isn't as giant as you think it would be. It's $4.5 million was donated last year directly to 219 candidates, 8 of which were Democrats, and the rest all Republican.
But so we do cross party lines on occasion. This isn't a partisan thing.
Absolutely, it's not a partisan thing.
Any candidate or politician they think can help their bottom line, they're going to donate to keep them in office. Absolutely.
So, you know, for example, Democrats in Louisiana, because we're a pretty pro-gun state, there are Democrats in Louisiana who've taken donations from the gun lobby, and not just NRA. I discovered there are about 8 giant groups that spend a lot of money, and then there are a whole bundle of smaller groups that aren't as dominant in a...
And let's break that down. The total gun sales in the United States are in the billions of dollars, right?
$28 billion in just gun industry sales.
Okay, now that's with a B, but the bribe is in the millions of dollars.
You said 4.5?
1,000th less. So think of the return on the investment.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's more money than that, and there's more money than that comes to the gun industry in different ways. So that's just guns and ammo sales. So it doesn't account for all of the giant conventions they have, and there's a lot of money that comes to them that way. It doesn't account for all the the fun stuff, the packs and the
events and accessories and things that are adjacent to the actual guns and the ammunition. That 28 billion doesn't account for any of that stuff.
So think how cheap it is to buy a politician.
Well, and they also spent though pretty close to $6 million in lobbying all the different groups, but the web spread out from there. I was surprised to find out that just the NRA alone, they also spend money lobbying for natural resources. Because a lot of the natural resource guys are also tied up with helping with the gun lobby.
So like in this state, a lot of our candidates take a lot of money from like big oil companies because we're sort of allowing big oil to take everything from us. I mean, we see how the boot of Louisiana is disappearing. So if the gun lobby can put some money into that industry and that gets filtered to candidates, that's another way they can sort of hide just how much money they're spending.
Absolutely. Civil rights, they're lobbying federal budget. And I noticed that a lot of it is also law enforcement. A lot of it is tied to the whole othering of people. They're giant supporters of the border wall. And I'm not saying, I'm not trying to make any decisions about whether or not that's good, but we do know there's a lot of othering of people involved in that, and that of course leads to us being afraid. The more afraid we are, the more likely we are to buy a gun. It's all sort of this giant ugly marketing.
So basically what you're saying is the gun lobby is diversifying where they put their campaign donations into areas where fear motivates people to possibly buy guns and ammunition.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And it also, if we think about gun violence in this country, do you know that last year close to 500,000 people were non-fatal victims of gun violence? So
no, I mean, we know, we've talked about these numbers of how many people last year died from gun violence, 40,000. But we're talking about 500,000 people that have had to seek medical attention. They didn't die, but they had to go to the hospital, many of which are not covered and couldn't afford the bills, which means this gets passed on to the taxpayer.
Absolutely. And as a retired physician, how much do you think that impacts?
Well, remember that means that 10 people get shot for everybody who retires, 10 or 12. And actually, that's when I was in the service, I was a trauma surgeon. That's in the range. So it isn't any different. And how much of those people are covered by insurance and how much of them aren't, it doesn't really matter. It is a drain on our society that's totally unnecessary. It doesn't happen in countries where everyone isn't armed. In France, in England, people don't get shot. And they spend half the amount of money we do on health care, and they live longer.
Well, and talking about a drain, private security industry in our country is also a $30 billion industry. No other country comes anywhere near that.
I've lived in France off and on for 20 years. I've never seen a private guard. Whole time I lived in France. Think about that, because there aren't any guns. Not that there aren't any guns, you could probably find one.
Sure.
You just can't go out and buy one.
There's a process,
There's common sense gun sales.
Everyone hunts. All of my neighbors in France have dogs and shotguns. They bring me wild boar and rabbits all the time.
I want to come to France with you.
It has nothing to do with hunting, okay? This is foolish. You don't hunt with an AK-47.
No. Well, and you bring up the common sense gun laws seem to affect some of these other countries where they don't have this kind of problem. It's not that there aren't weapons, it's just these common sense laws minimize these kind of events. You don't hear about these things very frequently, but they're happening nearly daily here in America. Let me ask you this. In your research, did you find a percentage of Louisianans that are in favor of common sense gun laws?
I did.
Surprise, right?
Y'all, I was pleasantly surprised. In Louisiana, a very pro-gun state, 88% of Louisianians favor background checks. Almost 90% of Louisianians favor common sense gun laws, gun legislation.
More comprehensive background checks than what exists at the moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wouldn't you like to meet one of the people that says, now give everybody a gun? It would be interesting to know what his feeling, why anyone would say that.
Well, we've met a couple people, but they don't want to talk. In our experience, they didn't want to talk.
They won't talk on
They don't want to
camera.
talk on camera, but we know that they're
They
out there.
exist.
But we would love to invite someone to come and sit with us and explain why you feel that just give everyone a gun. We would love to hear that. Here's another surprising number. 68% of Louisianians favor raising the legal firearm purchase age to 21 specifically to prevent mass shootings.
I mean, as we go over the wide swath of mass shootings, it is clear that they are more often pulled off by someone who is under the age of 30, and there is an even deeper cell of some of the teenage years to early 20s. Decision making is the brain is still forming in those years, and the decision making process from deciding to do this to execution, it's a lot more likely.
I think we all can remember what we did when we were teenagers. and wonder why we did it.
I wonder why I'm alive.
And then you say, there has to be limits to what teenagers can do. We don't let 14-year-olds drive cars. We have learner's permits. We restrict dangerous things, but not guns. And then you have to ask yourself why.
Well, so 90% of Louisianans would like more comprehensive background checks, maybe closing some of those loopholes that allow guns to fall through those systems. And then almost 70% of Louisianans want to raise the minimum age to 21, but nothing happens.
Nothing happened. And I don't know whether or not it's tied to that our leaders tend to be at the top of the list of recipients, campaign finance recipients from the gun lobby. Scalise is in the top 2 of the House. Kennedy is in the 11th in the Senate, and almost every single Republican candidate for our state elections are pretty healthy. They max out. They're maxed out.
So follow the money. It's awfully hard to get somebody to vote for not having lunch and dinner.
And you know, it like you were mentioning earlier, it's about business. It's about unfettered business, where we're allowing businesses to do their job, which is to make money, but at the expense of actual lives in this case.
Right. I mean,
they're doing their job. They're selling guns.
You see this, and it can be true for any business. The bottom line, protecting the money that's coming in, is the top priority. And sometimes a business can max out the amount of profit they make on their product. Then they start having to make decisions that affect the people that help them create that bottom line. And in this case, the gun lobby is looking to continue making money at any cost, including thwarting common sense legislation that people want overwhelmingly in this country and in this state, specifically so that they can keep the flow of money in, and those dollars then often go back to line the pockets of our politicians and our elected officials, and this is what you call corruption. So nobody's getting listened to. The voters aren't being listened to. It doesn't matter if you want it. It only appears to matter if business wants the legislative outcomes that we're getting. And this is why we at Make It Fair, along with the Wolf Pack, Indivisible, NOLA, and Represent Us, are pushing one piece of anti-corruption legislation. There's a bunch of them out there, but you can check out on our website, makeitfair.us, the American Anti-Corruption Act. It's a real quick read, and you'll see how it really undoes the motivation for elected officials to act in this corrupt manner and to bring democracy back to the people. So go check that out. You can also go to the top of our Facebook page. It's in a pinned video with Jennifer Lawrence, and check it out. Not only can you read it, you can also sign your name. The more citizens that put their name on these pieces of legislation, the more likely we can get them on ballots for ballot initiatives, so that we can go around the elected officials who don't seem to want to take any action. But we're also, as Make It Fair, going to reach out to every candidate running in Louisiana here in 2019 and ask them to sign the American Anti-Corruption Act. You know, if you're really for democracy and for the people, it should be a no-brainer. No candidate should be afraid of signing it. And if you are, we got some questions for you. So go check that out. Any closing thoughts?
Yes. Don't forget to share our video. This isn't theoretical. People are being murdered in schools. If you want your kids safe, we need to get this law passed. To do that, we need voters, one at a time. So if you share this video with 5 people, and they share it with 5 people, that's 25. So think about it, and if you don't want your kids shot in school, think about how to stop it.
For Tracy Bender and Stuart Phillips, I'm Harmon Dash on Make It Fair. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you.